Ever wonder why Bob Marley Group was officially called the Wailing Wailers and not the Wailers? That's because the original Wailers were made up of a group of white Americans from Tacoma, Washington, and they were called the Wailers. And Cox and Dodd didn't want any legal issues with them. Here is their story. Before the world knew the name Wailers in connection with reggae rhythms and Jamaican shores, another band was already making waves under that very same moniker. This was a group from the misty, evergreen-lined streets of Tacoma, Washington. They were a rock and roll outfit, raw and full of youthful energy. Their story begins long before Bob Marley's legendary group ever stepped into a recording studio. The confusion between these two bands, separated by geography and by genre, has persisted for decades. It's a strange twist of fate. One name, two distinct and influential sounds. The original Wailers, the American rock and roll pioneers, unknowingly chose a name that later became globally synonymous with a different musical movement. That mix-up has caused countless moments of mistaken identity for fans digging through record bins or searching online archives. Imagine a teenager in the 1970s looking for the gritty, saxophone-driven sounds of the Northwest, but instead finding the lilting, spiritual reggae of the Caribbean, or a reggae aficionado stumbling upon the garage rock punch of Louie Louie when they expected no woman, no cry. That overlap has shrouded Tacoma's band, making their story urgent to tell. This isn't just about a shared name, it's about parallel histories that rarely intersect but remain linked. The Wailers from Washington helped define a rugged regional sound that rippled through generations of musicians. They were trailblazers, loud, unapologetic, and distinctly American. Their journey deserves to be pulled from the shadows of a more famous namesake. Understanding their origins helps reveal innovation happening in the late 1950s and early 1960s, far from the hubs of New York or Los Angeles. The Tacoma Wailers are a reminder that history isn't a straight line. Names and legacies tangle, creating side stories that enrich the past. For every global icon, dozens of regional heroes laid the groundwork. The Wailers of the Pacific Northwest were architects of a sound and a vital force in rock and roll. Their story is one of originality, regional pride, and a name that would echo through music history in more ways than one. The story of the Wailers begins in 1958 in the working-class city of Tacoma, Washington. It was a time of burgeoning teenage rebellion, and rock and roll was its soundtrack. A group of ambitious high school students came together driven by a shared love for the electrifying sounds of artists like Link Ray Duane, Eddie John Greek, guitar and trumpet Rich Dangle, lead guitar Mark Marush, tenor sax Mike Burke, drums Kent Morrill, piano and vocals. They were young, they were loud, they practiced relentlessly in garages and basements, honing a sound grittier than polished pop. Their early days were marked by a DIY spirit they weren't waiting to be discovered. They took matters into their own hands. Band and manager Buck Ormsby, who would soon join as their bassist, founded Etiquette Records, a revolutionary act for teenagers in the late 1950s. It gave them complete creative control, captured raw, high-energy performances. Etiquette became a hub for other local bands. The Wailers built a reputation for wild, powerful live shows, packing dance halls, packing teen clubs across Washington, across Oregon. Their sound mixed rock and roll rhythm and blues instrumental surf rock delivered with unheard-of intensity, Rich Dangle's aggressive guitar work, Mark Marush's wailing saxophone creating a sonic signature both danceable and dangerous. They created atmosphere and experience that left audiences breathless. Their energy was infectious. They became popular, they became influential. This formation period established the Northwest sound music born from gray skies and teenage angst, characterized by heavy guitar riffs, powerful drum beats, a raw, unpolished production style, crafting a regional identity distinct from California, distinct from Nashville, reflecting a rugged landscape and independent spirit. The Tacoma Garage was their laboratory. The sound they engineered echoed far beyond the city limits. In 1959, the Wailers unleashed a song that would become their calling card and a cornerstone of the Northwest sound. That song was Tall Cool One. It was an instrumental track, driven by a simple yet unforgettable two-chord riff that was both menacing and impossibly catchy. The song was a perfect showcase for the band's signature style, a swaggering rhythm section, a bluesy piano line, and the powerful interplay between Rich Dangle's biting guitar and Mark Marush's honking saxophone. Tall Cool One was not just a song, it was a statement. It was the sound of cool confidence, a sonic strut that captured the attitude of a new generation. The importance of Tall Cool One cannot be overstated. It was a massive regional hit, but its influence spread much further when it was picked up for national distribution by Golden Crest Records. The song climbed the Billboard charts, reaching number 36 in 1959 and then, in a rare feat, charting again 5 years later in a re-recorded version, reaching number 38 in 1964. This national exposure introduced the rest of America to the raw, guitar-driven sound brewing in the Pacific Northwest. It was a sound that was grittier and more aggressive than much of the instrumental rock of the day, prefiguring the harder rock styles that would emerge in the coming years. The track's genius lay in its simplicity and its power. The main riff was something any aspiring guitarist could learn, yet it was delivered with a professional snarl that was hard to replicate. The song's structure allowed for improvisation, making it a highlight of their live shows where Dangle and Marish could trade explosive solos. Tall Cool One became an anthem for teenagers across the country, a perfect soundtrack for cruising in a car or dancing at a sock hop. It was instrumental music with the soul of rock and roll and the attitude of rhythm and blues, a combination that proved to be irresistible and timeless. More than just a hit single, Tall Cool One was an inspiration. It showed countless young musicians in garages across the Northwest, and beyond that, you didn't need complex chord progressions or slick production to make an impact. All you needed was a great riff, a driving beat, and a whole lot of attitude. The song's DNA can be heard in the work of countless bands that followed, from garage rock acts of the mid-60s to the punk rockers of the 70s. It was a foundational text for a new kind of rock and roll, one that valued energy and authenticity above all else. Tall Cool One was the Wailers' gift to the world, a short, sharp blast of rock and roll perfection. The Wailers were not alone in shaping the musical landscape of the Pacific Northwest. They were part of a triumvirate of bands that defined the Northwest sound: the Kingsmen from Portland, Oregon, Paul Revere and the Raiders from Boise, Idaho. Together, these groups created a regional rock and roll scene that was as influential as any in the country. They shared a common musical vocabulary, raw, driving energy, a reliance on powerful guitar riffs, an unpolished charm that felt authentic and immediate, music made for packed, sweaty dance halls. The Wailers were arguably the originators. They were the first to record what would become the scene's unofficial anthem, Louie Louie. The Kingsmen's version became the chart-topping smash hit, but the Wailers first saw the song's potential and recorded a raucous garage rock version in 1961. Their arrangement featured an iconic riff and party vibe shouting. That arrangement laid the blueprint other bands would follow. Covering and sharing songs was central to the Northwest sound. Paul Revere and the Raiders brought theatrical showmanship, Revolutionary War costumes, choreographed stage moves. The Kingsmen brought raw, almost indecipherable energy. The Wailers remained the scene's heart and soul, founding their own label and pushing the envelope. They were the musicians, respected for instrumental prowess and pioneering spirit. They proved you could make it on your own terms, right from your hometown. This movement provided a blueprint for independent scenes for decades. Clubs, radio stations, record labels. The bands proved major city hubs weren't required for groundbreaking music. They fostered a local ecosystem that supported their sound. They were community builders who gave the Pacific Northwest youth a raw, rebellious identity. This identity echoed forward, setting the stage for hard rock and the grunge explosion. The Wailers' influence stretches far beyond their 1960s heyday, casting a long shadow that would eventually touch the grunge movement from Seattle in the early 1990s. The raw power, distorted guitars, and a DIY ethos that defined bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. The Wailers were the forefathers of this sound. They championed a style that was heavy, loud, and emotionally direct. Those were core grunge values. Sub Pop Records, the legendary label, released a Northwest garage compilation, Here Ain't the Sonics, which featured the Wailers. However, their legacy was complicated by the name they shared with Bob Marley's band. As Bob Marley and the Wailers rose to global fame in the 70s, the Tacoma band's name was eclipsed. Legally, the Jamaican group secured international rights to the name, while the Washington band's fame stayed mostly in North America. The original Wailers had to bill themselves as the Fabulous Wailers, the Tacoma Wailers, to avoid confusion. It was a frustrating concession for a band that held the name for over a decade. That history left them significant, but overlooked. Despite the confusion, their musical impact is undeniable. They were among the first American rock bands to experiment with distortion and feedback, pushing what a guitar could do. They started their own label, Etiquette Records, a revolutionary act of independence nearly 2 decades before punk DIY. They created opportunities and provided a platform for local artists, including the Sonics. Their influence was structural as well as stylistic, teaching how to build a music scene from the ground up. Today, the Wailers from Tacoma deserve more than trivia status. They were innovators and architects of a regional sound with wide repercussions. They were the godfathers of garage rock and spiritual ancestors of grunge. Their story is a vital chapter in American rock and roll, a testament to teenagers in a garage creating a generational sound. It's time to look past the shared name and celebrate the Wailers, true, unadulterated Northwest rock and roll pioneers.